Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so I know I'm supposed to speak about trends, but the trendsetters are all here, so I'll need a bit of your support and participation. If I can accept that, that'll be good. Okay, so how many of us are truly prepared to face retirement? Show of hands. Any of us who's prepared for retirement? Okay, good. So we're getting started. We have at least 4 or 5 of us who feel that we're prepared for retirement, which is great. Makes our life much simpler, because in the next 20 minutes, what I wanted to discuss was, firstly, what do we see as 4 of the common challenges? And I'm restricting it to 4, because this is what we see as the most common fallacies or challenges that some of us face. And in the spirit of Olympics, we've named it longer, shorter, faster, greater. So we'll come back to this. Now, no point looking at challenges and not looking for some solutions, and we can have a bit of magic. We'll try and figure 3 magical wands we have in our pockets that we can actually use to overcome this challenge. And to put it all together, we will see how we can actually execute it with one simple solution. So like I said, I'll request your participation, your feedback, and if you can just be with me for the next 20 minutes, we'll try and discover some of these. So now 4 of us in a hall of about 200 said that we feel we are prepared for retirement. That is largely right, because 90% of people, individuals like us, feel that we are actually quite underprepared. So if you look at it, they regret that they've not started investing for retirement, or it's too late by the time they start thinking about retirement. Any of you feel that way? Yeah, that maybe it's a bit late. No, we should have thought about this, maybe come here. Outlook should have got this done 20 years back. We would have been better off. Yeah? Okay. Now, many of us will have a retirement kitty as well, because we've got pension, we've saved a bit, etc., etc. So super. But 33% of us actually will face the challenge that whatever we put together is not enough. And it may not last beyond 5 years of our retirement journey. So the reason we have to talk about this today is that it is a significant challenge. And while it's a challenge, it's not very difficult to overcome. So really this is about how do we keep the golden gleam in those golden years that we've been waiting for. And many of us have worked through several years, and we want those golden years to be our dream years, where we enjoy things and we spend time with our family, we go explore things, we look at our hobbies. How do we get to do that? So first let's look at what are the challenges, so that we know the problem before we can tackle it. The first significant challenge is that we underestimate how long we need the retirement corpus for. Why? Because humankind is making tremendous progress and we are all living longer. And while that's a great thing for all of us, that means you have to plan for a longer period post-retirement as well. So living longer is a reality today. The number of centenarians, which is people beyond 100 years of age, that's a graph of that. So you can see how medical science and environment is helping us actually live much longer. And that's reflected in India as well, because our average age is galloping ahead. So if we are in urban India, this will be a multiple above these numbers. Keep that in mind, because this is an average. This includes infant mortality, which is still reasonably high. So the actual number for you is going to be much larger, so keep that in mind. Don't plan for a period which looks like just 10, 15 years. It is likely to be much longer than what you thought when you started. So that's our longer challenge. Okay, let's look at the next one, which is the shorter challenge. The shorter is, many of us, including Gen Zs, any Gen Zs here in the house? Okay, super. Most Gen Zs, I'm told, want to work shorter. 40 after 40, right? So that's the target retirement age now. It's no longer 58, 60, 62, it's 40. So 40 is the new 60. And if you're going to work shorter, then guess what happens? Your post-retirement is going to be much, much longer than many who are in the traditional world of retiring around 60 or thereabouts. So that's another shorter challenge we have to deal with going forward. The faster is that price rise or inflation is something we will always underestimate. And we've tried this, tried again, when you get back maybe. But 10 years ago, if someone had a monthly expense of about 30,000 rupees, this has already gone to about 50,000 and it will gallop ahead. And these are very average pictures. But a very common error we make is that when we plan for our retirement, when we plan for our monthly expenses at 58, 60 or whenever we are doing the maths, we underestimate how quickly this expense will grow. And therefore we fall short. And the greater is that actually those expenses will remain short also because unanticipated new expenses will come in once we retire because of what's happening to us physically and what's happening to our lifestyle. So many of us, when we do our maths around what our monthly expenses is, we underestimate medical expenses. Just as an example, this is just an illustration, so please don't take it literally in that sense. But with medical inflation, even when you have coverage through insurance, co-pays, things that are not picked up by insurance, etc., is something most of us underestimate. So many of people we speak to have made this mistake. So the idea is, let's know what to cover before we can, jump in and find a solution. So these were the 4 common challenges. How can we now look at solutions, like I said, which are available with us? It's not a lot of looking around that we have to do. So the 3 magical wands, and each of these wands, I think, tries to tackle a separate issue that we discuss. So the first issue, which is how do we make sure the corpus is big enough, firstly, that we are not saving lesser than what we will need. And there the magical wand I'll pull out is the power of compounding. As someone has called it, it's the 8th wonder in the world. It's the oldest known trick. Even way back in the Panchatantras, etc., there are examples of how you can use compounding to your advantage. Just to illustrate it very simply. So suppose you've invested 10,000 rupees monthly in the equity markets. Right? So we know that it will add up to a fair amount of money. I think everyone knows that by now, right? So if you've done that for 15 years, that would have added up already to 40 lakh rupees. So you just put 10,000 rupees, it would have added up to 40 lakh rupees of corpus in 15 years. Yeah? But here's the magic. If you had started 10 years before that, you would already be a crorepati. Right? Many of us aspire to do that. All it took was put 10,000 rupees every month religiously for 25 years. And guess what? If this insight or wisdom had come to you when you were younger, we have at least 3 or 4 Gen Zs here, but anyone who's still in the lovely 20s, this would have been a whopping 6.4 crores. So look what starting 10 years before, how much of a difference it can make. So if the original was an X, you could have got 16 times that money had you started earlier. That's the magic of compounding. This is a great asset, use it to your advantage, so that you don't fall short of the corpus that you're aiming. Start as early as possible, and it's never too late. So if you haven't done that, please do it today. Okay, let's move to the next wand. And this is to try and cover the other challenge that we discussed, which is how do you make sure that you're not falling short of the corpus you built in the later years. Now the average behavior we see, and I'm calling it the average behavior, not representative of course, but the average behavior we see is that people have saved very, very meticulously, very hard, and given up expenses, given up many treats for themselves to get to a retirement corpus. And when retirement happens, one goes through the maths and says, okay, I will buy an annuity or I'll buy a deposit which will pay me quarterly interest or monthly interest, etc. And somehow it matches my cash flow or my expense needs every month, right? Isn't that most of us doing this, right? So we say, okay, my monthly expense is 60,000 rupees. As long as I can get interest or annuity or some sort of a cash flow coming back to 60, 70,000 rupees, I'm done, right? And that's a challenge, because that 60,000 rupees is great today. In 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years, it's not going to be enough. So what's very important is that when you design that corpus at investment, at retirement, when you invest it, make sure it is beating inflation. Because if it's not beating inflation, your chances of your money running out are very high, unfortunately. Which is where, as I say, risk is good. Unless you don't take risk, actually you're putting yourself at a much greater risk. And to do that, simple example, you put 1 lakh rupees, I'm taking this as an example, you put that 1 lakh rupee of corpus into 2 asset classes, debt and equity. Now we know that debt would have been more conservative, more steady, it would have given you a cash flow. You know, in India, if I look at the debt index, it returned 4.7%. I'm taking it post-tax, representative at 30%. Right? And similarly for equity, now we have that tax, so we're taking it at 12.5%. This is post-tax return for index investing for both of these, right? So that's what you get. What that means is that for a similar type of investment, look at what the growth number could be. So it looks like, okay, 5%, 15%, what's the big difference? But when you look at the corpus, money multiplying twice versus money multiplying almost 7.5 times, almost 4 times, was because of the asset class you chose. So no extreme is good. You need a balance of the two. But imagine having all your money in the first row and nothing in the second row. You would not be able to beat inflation or just about match inflation, which means that as your expenses go up, very difficult to make the math work for you. So do look at retirement planning holistically. Some amount of growth assets like equity or something that can beat inflation is very important in that, because at 60, keep in mind the first math, which is we are living longer. So we have a much longer lifespan now than what we thought at 60. It's time to enjoy that. It's not time to be a bit more too cautious almost at 60 and have the risk that money is going to run out. So some allocation to equity is the other magic wand available in the markets. Nothing else you have to do. It's just a question of how you allocate your retirement corpus. So that's the second area that I would urge that we look at. Now, what's the third challenge that we discussed earlier? And the third challenge, if I were to summarize it, it comes down to cash flow management. So I retired with a corpus. I know that this is the annuity I can build, but life may not be as straightforward is the issue. So let's look at an example. You know, Raj retired at 60, was very, very, you know, he got all the wisdom when he was 30, and then he was putting an SIP, and, you know, at that point in time, 30 years back, 2,500 rupees was a large sum of money. He was doing that, and he grew it with his income. So at 10%, he kept increasing it. He did the right thing. Now he's got a corpus of 2.5 crores, 2.2 crores, right? So sizable corpus built up for his retirement. So he did all the right things. Good thing is that his expenses today for his lifestyle is about 1 lakh. And when he does the math, actually, if you can, with a 2.2 crore corpus, you can get an annuity of about 1,50,000. So actually, he's got 50,000 rupees of additional buffer with him as well, which is the great news, right? So he's well covered. Great case study of what you should be doing. The issue is that he did not realize some of the challenges or additional expenses which will come his way. House renovation, you know, one obvious large item which we often miss out, right? Spending time with your children, often in most families now, someone's overseas, and 1 or 2 visits can set you really back. Inflation. You thought that 1 lakh rupees was good enough. Actually, in about 7 years, it's not good enough. So even that 1 lakh 50 is not going to cover your expenses 7 years later. So these are some real challenges that we have to keep in mind. And therefore, in each of these situations, you find that his annuity of 1 lakh 50 is not going to cover Raj for the rest of his retirement period. So the point is that we have a straight line when we plan. And as the picture shows, life often is a lot more exciting, a lot more complicated than a straight line. And we end up having a lot of, ups and downs. And one easy way to manage that is, imagine you could write that annuity check and decide the amount every few months, every month if you'd want. So rather than being dependent on giving your money to someone and then receiving an interest and not having access to that pot of money, that 2.2 crores. Imagine you had a full access to that pot of money, your corpus, and you could write your own check. You could go up and down with it based on what your actual need is. So when you needed to spend more, you could do that. If you did not want the entire 1 lakh 50, you needed only 80,000 this month, you could do that. And that's what a mutual fund SWP, a very, I would say, underappreciated facility that is offered by the industry can do. A systematic withdrawal plan is the reverse of a systematic investment plan. Now, many of us know about an SIP that you put money every month. An SWP does the reverse. You already got the money. Now you redeem it. You pull it out. And the good thing, like in an SIP, is that you choose. When do you want the redemption? What amount do you want? You want it every week? You want it every month? You can change the amounts. You want it step up, step down, etc. All those facilities are available. So I would argue that it is probably the most potent way for you to manage your cash flows very effectively while keeping full access to your corpus. Because in most other solutions, you have to give away the corpus. And if you have a sudden need of an emergency or you want to spend more, you are now struggling with your cash flow. The corpus is there, but you can't access it. But here, you have full access. So that's another thing that I would argue is a great way to deal with the cash flow. So again, available magic wand. It's there in your back pocket. Please use it. It's all there. I would again argue that for each of these solutions, whether it is looking at a broad-based asset allocation, whether it is looking at great cash flow management, or it is looking at compounding to use to your benefit, a mutual fund is a great solution for all the great reasons. And please look at that as part of your retirement planning solution. At Bandhan Mutual Fund, we are proud to have worked with millions of customers like yourselves in these areas, not just in retirement, but in terms of building corpus, in cash flow management, etc. The idea is to keep it very workable for you. Now, we do have a retirement-focused product. So there is a solution-oriented product which is meant for retirement planning, both in your accumulation phase as well as your usage phase. So it can do both. And the product is built like that. What we're also continuously doing is working on better insights that we can get from you, from our customers, so that our financial engineers can build better products, better solutions. So your insights is what helps us, nudges us, inspires us to go out and do something more. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention. As to end, I would say that retirement is a wonderful period. It is called the golden years. But it has two essential components. One, I hope you have someone to live for, but also we must have something to live on. Otherwise, it can be a bit incomplete. Thank you so much.